For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Good evening. Welcome to today's Entrepreneur, presented by FL Montreal, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with FL Montreal's Josh Miller. Welcome back, Josh.
Hello, Dan.
How'd you enjoy your trip?
Missed you last week.
Yeah. Well, 2 weeks ago.
Oh, 2 weeks ago. That's
last
right.
Week was Victoria Day.
Oh, that is true. That's
Been a
true.
while.
But España was amazing.
Muy bien.
And muy bien. Absolutamente. And it was full of life, the economy is actually doing super nice there. So maybe it was the fact that it was May and people are on vacation and the old town is always good. But there's no question that España is muy bien.
Excellent. This evening, we're going to talk to Frédéric of Paramedic. So this is a company that does a lot of medical supplies, and we're also going to deal with mergers and acquisitions on the program today. And you're going to be the expert, so later I'm going to quiz you about how to do a merger or an acquisition successfully, including how to figure out what exactly you're buying and how to bring those two organizations together. So that's
I look forward to you grilling me, Dan.
coming up later on the program. But first, as usual, entrepreneurial news and notes of the week. And anything you want to talk about, by the way, based on your trip, Josh? Anything come up business-wise there that you noticed?
I think the one thing that stood out, because I was very much a tourist in these places, and the question is, how do businesses deal with tourists? And the fact is, as long as they make it really simple, because there were a couple of places that didn't really work out so well from a tourist standpoint, but the ones that did, you know, it was easy to get tickets online. The lines were easy to get through. The tours and the explanations were good. The restaurant, the hotels themselves that were trying to appease to it, that's what really stood out to me. And the ones that did it well, did it super well. There were a couple of hotels, local hotels, that did it really well, that guided us, that gave us restaurant and tourist attraction locations, that gave us kind of quick fixes to what could have been a much slower. That's really it. So for me, it was all about client and customer service than anything else. And that's what stood out for me. So my trip to Spain was just emphasizing the fact that client service is everywhere in the world, because we see it here. You do it, you see it, I see it, I do it. Paramedic Canada, there's no question they do it as well. It's all around the world. And if you do it well, you will go back, because I did go on TripAdvisor, or I will, for a couple of places that I haven't written yet, and I will comment on the fact of how helpful people were.
Very nice. This story we want to get to from the Globe and Mail recently. 7 takeaways from Canada's top small business leaders. It's interesting. This quote is interesting. When you're running a small business, nothing is beneath you. That was one of the stories that came out of this conference.
And the reality is, and you know, I'm looking at Frédéric, and he's kind of nodding his head already. The reality is, when you're running a business, whether you're starting one, whether you bought one, whether you're in a mature stage and doing it, nothing should be beneath you. You should be able to be involved and deal with anything and everything that the company does, because then you can profess how well or how poorly it's getting done. Then you can sit in your customer's shoes or your supplier's shoes and understand it best. Then you can sit in your human resource, your employees, your team member shoes, and understand what they're going through. So when somebody says nothing is beneath you, it's more about what you can do better than anything else.
They have a few points here, including, walk a mile in your client's shoes. This one is interesting, though. Borrow when you don't need it.
That is something I hope most businesses understand. When you're doing well, because the banks, you know, when you're doing poorly, banks don't want to lend to you. You really got to prove yourself 100 ways from here to next Saturday. When you're doing well, it's much easier to get your line of credit. It's much easier to get your term loan. When you're doing well, go for it. Get your umbrella on a rainy day. Not everybody understands it. Not everybody thinks about it, right? Because everything's going so well. What do I need a bank loan for? You know what? Negotiate it when you're doing well, so that when you're not doing well, you don't have to dig through the trenches and do it again. So that's something that I think, as much as many entrepreneurs I deal with understand it, not everybody realizes it day to day. So go for it and do it.
So get the loan approved, but don't necessarily, I mean, do you want people to invest it as they're booming, or just kind of set it aside for a rainy day?
get it while it's approved so you have it for that rainy day. You're perfectly correct, Anne, because you never know when you need it. And when you're doing well, that's the perfect time to do it. I think the other thing that came out in this article, and there was a comment that says not all about the idea. I'm going to kind of adjust that a little bit. It's not all about the original idea. Everybody's trying to look for an original idea. You know what? If you have an original idea, great. If it's going to make money, great. But you know what? There's so many great ideas worldwide, because it's not just about Montreal. It's not just about our local little environment. Worldwide. If you can find an idea that's working super well in some other part of the world that's not working here, who's to say you have to reinvent the wheel? Who's to say that you need to go out and try something brand new? Get that idea. It's working super well elsewhere. You can kind of imagine doing it here in Quebec, in Canada, and apply it here. And I think that's really one of the aspects of it's not all about the idea. It's not all about the original idea. It's about bringing it to the right place at the right time.
This new website that you wanted to bring up a blog from, businessknowhow.com, they read an article entitled What to Know Before You Buy a Franchise. This is interesting because we've dealt with a lot of franchisors and franchisees on the program. What was the takeaway for you? Because it is sort of this prefab model, so I think a lot of people assume there's going to be very few headaches.
And, you know, with franchises, and we can probably spend a whole hour just talking franchises. We've had some entrepreneurs on there, but there's a few things that definitely stand out for me. And again, not to be all inclusive or really rule out all the questions, but first and foremost, can you follow somebody else's rules? You know, it's a great idea. Yes, go get the right franchise and all that, but can you follow somebody else's rules? Because as a franchisee, you need to really say, okay, I need to sell this product. I need to sell in that way. It's marketed in that fashion. Yes, you might be able to adjust it slightly for your local market, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of rules to follow. So are you a rule follower? That being said, do you love the product you're selling? If you're going to get into a franchise, you got to really be in tune and love that product that you're selling. So if you can love it and live it and breathe it, well, then it might be easier to follow all those rules.
This piece from entrepreneur.com, and this is one that speaks to me. 5 things entrepreneurs should never post on social media. I'll read them out really quickly. So, politics and religion.
Dan, you know, you sometimes have politics and religion in posts that you have, right? But not
rarely religion. Politics, yes.
So what do you think, Dan? Do you think in a business world you should display your politics? Is it too? Are you going to alienate some clients? What do you profess?
Generally speaking, no. However, some businesses are inherently political, and those businesses, yes, they do need to take stands once in a while. And some high-profile entrepreneurs are involved in political battles, whether they want to or not. I'm thinking of, people that might be up against certain regulations, people who might be defending clients that are in a certain industry. So in that case, yes, absolutely, it's okay to take political stances, but you have to do it with the utmost caution, of course.
And you don't want to really piss off some of your customers because they might be left, they might be right, they might be middle, whatever is. I guess it depends on the business that you're in. Are you in a professional business? Are you just selling a product? Are you involved in an industry that's very fraction from call it a NAFTA standpoint or USMCA, whatever you want to call it, from a North American agreement or US Mexico Canada agreement? I guess it depends on the industry you're in.
But sometimes if you're on the right side of history, and if your company's perspective is on the right side of politics, yeah, go ahead and double down. And if you're convinced that you're right, history will show that you're right, and that could bring serious benefits in the long term. This is part of the PR that I do, because we don't work with governments necessarily, but we work with entrepreneurs who occasionally can be political, and it's super important to express yourself once in a while and to make a difference. Yes, in a polite and diplomatic way, but nonetheless, sometimes you have to put the pedal to the metal.
No question. Agree fully. And as we've said multiple times before on this program, Dan, the customers need a reason to go into your store, need a reason to buy from you. Are you giving them the right reason? Do you need to give them a business reason? Do you need to give them a product reason, a service reason? Or does it help to also give that political, that opinion reason that might help them drive in? Can't say there's a one answer for all, but definitely something to consider.
More appealing for millennials, by the way, to have some of those political stances. I'll read the other parts of the top 5 list here real quick. All you, all the time, something to avoid. Negative stuff about your clients or the world around you. Excessive updates and non-social content. So basically stuff that creates a distraction, I think, is one way to.
Excessive updates. That's an interesting one because, what do you really keep telling people? Anyhow, it's a whole longer discussion than that, but definitely things to keep in mind.
Let's get it going. Today's Entrepreneur on CJAD 800. On the way, we're going to talk to Frédéric of Paramedic. And then Josh discusses mergers and acquisitions later in the show, how to know what you're buying, and how to successfully come together.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Inspiring stories from outstanding business people, Dan Delmar and FL Montreal's Josh Miller with you for today's Entrepreneur. And this evening, let's welcome our guest, Frédéric of Paramedic. Welcome to CJD, Fred.
Thanks for having me.
And I have actually a ton of questions about the mergers and acquisition because there's a whole story behind how Fred got into Paramedic and how he bought it. But we're going to really keep that towards the end of the program. But before we get there, we're going to start and say, Frédéric, what is Paramedic Canada?
Yeah, Paramedic is a company that manufactures and distributes and sells first aid products, safety kits, and orthopedic products, some diagnostic apparel as well. I believe that we are coming to a point where we are a market leader in Quebec. We are progressing a lot in the rest of the country. So this is where we stand in terms of the size of where we are.
And did it always start with first aid supplies? Did it develop into anything else?
We bought the business in 2012, so we completed our 6th year in January. It was initially a company that was outsourcing most of its product. So we obviously bringing in from elsewhere in the world to Canada, our first aid, bandages, tapes. We moved that to, obviously we still have the first aid business. We beefed it up quite a bit on the one hand, but we grew it into a much larger company with a larger stance, I find. We grew in orthopedic garments a lot, and that's a very we're having a lot of success with our portfolio right now with this segment. The safety kits is an adjacent segment, I would say, to the first aid business, and that's a part where we've been able to diversify our customer base as well.
So obviously, demographics being what they are, you expect this to be a growth industry in the coming decades. Did that kind of generational demographic reality factor into your decision to get in this business?
Yes, definitely. We are. I was talking about first aid. We are competing against a lot of multinational, but I believe that our product offering is just going over and above what these guys are offering, and we're offering these simple specialties that the home care people, for instance, needs. There's a lot of home care services that are needed right now. A lot of people wants to stay longer in their home. The one-day operation, for instance, the hospital system cannot take more than what it is right now.
Nor do patients necessarily want to stay there even longer.
So you need home care services, nurse coming at home to change your bandages, that sort of things. Yes. And we are supplying a lot of that industry through our retailer clients. And obviously, to your point, Dan, yes, it was a major factor in our decision to buy the company.
Now, Fred, where did your background come from? Were you in the medical field before that? Like, how did you get into this even?
Well, long story, but I'm the son of a pharmacist, the grandson of a pharmacist too. So we've always been into that business to start with. I started my career as an accountant. I worked in capital markets.
We don't hold that against you. We love accountants on this program.
Obviously. But, I was in capital market. I was mostly working with the healthcare sector. And that has helped me a lot to get into the business initially. But we'll talk about that later, M&A and all. But I believe that I have a partner that's helping me greatly. He was a sales representative in the medical field as well. And the mix of competencies whenever you're getting into a business is very important. So I think we've been lucky enough, me and my partner, to complete each other. And to get where we want to get.
Your partner is family, though, right?
Yep, brother.
Now, you and your brother, you've been in this business. You're working it together. Do you get along? Do you have formal meetings? What do you happen when you disagree? Do you have specific roles between the two of you?
We're families, so obviously there's certain things that, quite frankly, we do have our core competency, each other. So we respect the fact that he's good in some parts of the business, I'm good in some other parts. I wouldn't step on his toes for certain things, and he wouldn't do the same for some others. So I think complementary skills is a very important thing. That's what we have. So we're lucky enough to have that.
No, excellent. And you're how many people today in your firm?
Varying depending on the seasons, but between 20 and 30.
Now, when you first started and you first bought this business, how many were you?
There was one. It was me. Everything else was outsourced. My partner joined me 2 months later.
Now, how did that go? I mean, this is 6+ years ago, where everything was outsourced. It was just one, and you're now 20 to 30 people. What was the progression like? Why did you want to change from everything outsourced to hiring your own people?
Well, on paper, initially, I'm an accountant, so I've looked at the transaction. I worked on many transactions in my career prior to making that move. A lot of these services, like the Salesforce, was outsourced. The warehouse management was outsourced. Account management was outsourced. On paper, it looks well because it looks like variable costs. So you kind of think that your edge on the way down, on the way up, your P&L will always make sense for that reason. But the truth is, whenever you want to press the gas, you're having a third party, exactly, and not that they're doing wrong, but they work for themselves, so it's never as good as if you do it yourself. So we've made that move to integrate logistic first, then warehouse management, then the Salesforce, then the account management. All of these things obviously ended up with a larger cost structure, but it was well worth it, and that has enabled us to multiply revenues in 6 years by more than 4 times. So obviously that's
something's working.
Yeah, something's working.
Was it difficult to establish a value for that business before buying it, given that everything was sort of not centralized?
Dan, you're cutting into our last moment of the show.
You're right. Let's
it's a great question, by the way, and I do want to hear the answer because there's so much to talk about. But let's go with that. Determining a value, I think that's huge.
Well, obviously, you have a P&L, you have a value. You would apply, if you want to go simplistic, you'd apply a multiple to the earnings and do what everybody does. But the truth is that it's a lot more complex than that. Whenever I was in capital market, if you deal with a multinational, with very large operations, dealing with this kind of organization, make it so that the strength of customer base, that sort of things, is less of a risk. When you're dealing with the smaller companies, do they really deserve a 5 times EBITDA multiple, considering their dependencies on 1 or 2 customers, and if these customers are just running away, then they have nothing else. The strength of these companies is not the same as the larger companies I've been working for before and been covering before, and it makes a huge difference in terms of valuation. That's when you're
going outsourcing and you're deciding to go right into hiring your own people. What's the first step? Do you look outside of your world? Do you just post online? What do you look for quickly, just before we go to break? Is there anything quick that you were looking at before, when you were going from outsourcing to having some of your own people?
Well, quite frankly, it happens the other way, Josh. We wanted to do that. We've been looking for it, but it's always an opportunity that comes up, and you have to seize it. And that's what happened to us. We had a chance to hire a very good groups of sales reps. That's an opportunity we didn't miss. We had an opportunity to integrate vertically our operations, and that's an opportunity we didn't miss. So it goes the other way. Although you want to plan everything, it's never really happening that way.
Sometimes it falls in your lap, and sometimes you just have to, like you say, seize the opportunity, be opportunistic about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's huge. And as we go on and we talk more about the marketing, and eventually when we talk about the merger and acquisition that you made at Paramedic, I think that will also become evident.
Fred Roy of Paramedic, our guest this evening on Today's Entrepreneur. So we'll get to that mergers and acquisitions talk in a little bit, and Josh will have his advice and marketing, HR, and more issues on the way on Today's Entrepreneur.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome back to today's Entrepreneur, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. Dan Delmar and FL Montreal's Josh Miller with you, as usual, on a Monday night. And our guest this evening is Frédéric of Paramedic. They make medical supplies. And Fred, you bought this business. It was 2012, correct?
Yep.
And so tell me about getting into this business and dealing with some of the big players in the industry. You know, we know a lot of the chains and everything, and now you're well established. But how did you get into those chains, and how did you find dealing with these large conglomerates?
Well, initially, when we bought the business, we had clients, mostly pharmacy clients in Quebec. So obviously, we diversified that over the 6 year we ran the business. But yes, obviously, you need to be in touch with these people. They have a negotiator. Every single chain have their own negotiator negotiating every single category. So you need to sell your product. You need to get their buy-in. You need to get the what they call the planograms, which is a retail suggestion that gets pushed down to the stores, and then you need to explain to the stores once you're there how to sell your product, what they do, and what they should say to your customers. You know, pharmacies are businesses where you have sometimes 20, 25 people working, so you need to, and very often you have specialists by different sections. So cosmetic, orthopedics, first aid, and depending on so you need to educate these people as it goes, you know, to make sure that you optimize your opportunities.
So when you're thinking marketing, because we're kind of delving into the marketing aspect, is it more about education? Is it more about blasting and trying to get visibility of the brand name? Where do you focus, or is it really everything?
It's both. Obviously, we tried different things at the very beginning. Some were okay, some were not. We found that it's always, for where we are right now, it's always better to do these kind of initiatives, to run this kind of initiative through your clients. So, for instance, the pharmacies have a lot of marketing initiatives through their flyers, their brochures.
Do they impose it on you, or are you part of the
They don't
decision?
impose it, but obviously it's a business relationship. So you want to get in, obviously to create an incentives to deal with you, but also to get to get the benefits of and the visibility. You know, their websites. Some of the retailers in Quebec and elsewhere in Canada have very visible websites, and they get a lot of traffic. So you're able to post description of your products, what do they do, how to use it. You can sell your products on their websites as well. So there's different things you could do. The point is always to reach customers and make sure that they understand your brand, know who you are.
Now, in reaching customers, when you first started out, was there anything you did that kind of worked or didn't work?
Yes, but obviously, it was probably a mistake, but we went to television right away without having full
Well, you're a beautiful
distributions.
person. You should be on TV, Fred.
No, I wasn't on TV, but the advertisement was, and we got calls for these products that were advertised, except that the distribution wasn't perfect, and it wasn't into the main retailers. So we got calls saying, well, you have beautiful products, but unfortunately we cannot find it, so where should we go? We sort of,
A little premature. So you
Yeah.
had a great ad, but you didn't necessarily have the backup to supply it yet.
Exactly. So it was good for the visibility, but it did not materialize into a direct sales.
And today, what do you do for marketing that works for you today?
We worked a lot with the direct clients, so the pharmacies. We go to buying shows, trade shows. We work with the flyers. We go on the web. Social media as well is something that we do more and more. I think we are developing our competencies. We need to be present in all these fairs, all the marketplace where customers are shopping. So Amazon is now a reality. You need to be there. Pharmacy is a reality. You need to be there. Office supply is a sales channel that we've developed over the years. It's a complete different market if you compare to retail, but you need to be there.
You briefly touched right at the earlier on of the program about being a little vertical, going from what you were outsourcing everything to really trying to doing a little bit more yourself. Can you describe that and how you evolved into that?
Oh, you mean the operation side of the business?
Correct.
Yes, obviously, was, as I said, opportunity came up and we seized this opportunity. We've been able to we are very hands-on people, first of all. I think it's a characteristic of us, me and my partner, and we have a team that's very committed. We've been lucky enough to, bring in the right people at the right time. It's very often in business, it's how you seize opportunity and how you make it happen, right? So, the group of salespeople we hired were very respected into the province of Quebec. That has helped a lot, the strength of the brand of Paramedic. That has helped us to build our credibility on the one hand, get a lot more mandates as well. And in terms of product development, these people, the account managers that we have hired, had a lot of experience. So obviously combined with us, because obviously there's a tactical aspect to it, as I just mentioned with the sales force, but there's also the fundamentals, the tools that you have, your product portfolio, the products that you sell. You go playing the game with something, right? So we have a beautiful and a very innovative product line for orthopedic products, for instance. So that's something that we do well. It gets a lot of attention. Obviously, marketing it on the one hand is very important, and explaining it on the other is too. So I think that's the way we that duality is very important when.
Is it? Do you see yourself, especially with the rise in more home care, shifting more to a direct to consumer model, and are there more challenges with that consumer model?
Obviously, we need to respect our retail customers, so it's something that we always want to be careful with. But yes, truly, we go on Amazon because there's a marketplace on Amazon. The bulk of our sales remain with the retailers at this point. I think it's about being where the customers are. We are into the industrial market right now. We have become probably one of the top 3 safety kit manufacturer in this country. Office supply, we have done a good run, and we have more to go. Retail, our orthopedic line again is getting a lot of traction, a lot of attention, and we have a lot of people to see still. We'll probably have 2 or 3 more very fast year of growth coming up to us.
Now, what about supply chain? You're buying your goods, you're trying to source local, you're buying from overseas as well. Yeah. How did that work into your business plan?
Well, initially it was a pure outsourcing model. Now it's different. We are manufacturing. Our goal is to manufacture products with some kind of value added. I mean, there's products in that we sell that we will never be able to manufacture. That's the only that's.
So do you source them from like China, Taiwan,
China? Obviously, there's no other possibility. There might be another low-cost country because China is getting more expensive, as everybody knows. But the truth is that a lot of these products will never come back to Canada. However, orthopedic products, safety kits. And some others, because of the regulation, some others products, there's an opportunity to manufacture it profitably, obviously, in this country. And we are doing part of that now. We're launching a lab division at Paramedic. We have a lot of private label demand at this point. Obviously, we're going to fabricate products for Paramedic as well. And
so is that what's next? Like, what's next for Paramedic?
Yeah, that's a clear next step for us. A vertical integration that will probably help the profitability of the company, but also enable us to manufacture the products the way we want it to be manufactured.
All right, today's entrepreneur on CJAD 800, more with Frédéric of Paramedic, including his one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur. And coming up next, Josh discusses mergers and acquisitions, so how to know what you're buying and how to bring 2 organizations together successfully. So that is on the way.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome back. Today's entrepreneur on CJAD 800, inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar and FL Montreal's Josh Miller with you. And our guest is Frédéric of Paramedic. So we'll have his one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur coming up on the way. But first, Josh, talking about mergers and acquisitions, and you're the expert for this evening.
for this evening. Thank you, Dan, for pointing
I mean,
that
you're
out.
always the expert, but on this evening. So first, you see an opportunity as an entrepreneur. You know, maybe it's to merge with someone or to acquire someone. What are some of the basics of due diligence when you start to get into this exercise?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind, I mean, there's so many things, and we just won't do it justice in the next 5 minutes or so. But know what you're buying. I mean, really trying to get to understand what you're buying, and I feel Frédéric, you know, he's in his mind, he's like, okay, I got to know what I'm buying. He bought his business six plus years ago, and we'll come to it in a moment. But really know what you're buying. There's so many different aspects to the business. There's a product, there's a service, there's the people, there's the processes, there's the technology, there's contracts, there's obligations. There's so many aspects to know what you're buying. You really got to wrap your head around it. And the entrepreneur, the buyer, him or herself, may or may not understand all aspects. But you better make sure, if you don't understand all the aspects, you better make sure you find somebody that understands all the aspects, because you're buying everything. Typically, you're buying everything. You're not just picking and choosing what you want. You might be doing that, but chances are you're not. You're buying the entire business. So knowing what you're buying is truly key. Very motherhood. And we'll delve into a little bit of the specifics, but know what you're buying first. And I would say that, you know, customers and suppliers has got to be up there, you know, the top 5 of what you know you're buying. Because will the customer stay with you? Are they really linked to an individual, or are they linked to the company themselves? Suppliers, do they have specific contracts? Are you obligated to buy certain things from them? Do they have certain I'm not going to say kickbacks, but certain rebates, or, you know, if you buy certain volume discounts, you know, what is involved with it? So that's a really big aspect. And before I get into the other, I'm actually going to turn to Frédéric and say, when you were buying Paramedic, you know, what surprises, what was the first thing that stood out to you as to what you needed to look for when you were buying Paramedic?
Well, as you said, there was many things. I mean, to make a successful acquisition, you need to have industry knowledge, the tactical aspect of it, not just what everybody knows, but obviously you need to know the roots of the business you're jumping in. Whether you're getting this through employees that are staying with the business, or you know it, you know, up front. In our case, it was something that was lacking a little bit, and that's how we had to adjust very quickly.
Were you surprised with anything?
Well, obviously, I've been in M&A for a number of years, almost 10 years. You know, prior to doing that transaction, I did, you know, participate to a lot of acquisition, participated to the contracts, the negotiation of the contracts, and all these things. To me, whenever you were putting something on paper, obviously you were buying it, right? In our case, you know, the sellers of the company wasn't his understanding at all. So, you know, and a lot of things were said on paper, were clarified very well, like I used to do it before, except that in reality it wasn't the case. And there was 2 or 3 things that were major factors that could have been dangerous for us. I mean, we had to adapt very quickly.
So what was on paper didn't actually turn out to be true necessarily?
Not everything. And a few things were major things. Obviously, you know, you do what everybody does. You keep a balance of payment. You do all of these things, except that, well, obviously you believe that it's enough for the seller to say everything that needs to be said. But sometimes it's not the case, and you know, you end up with 2 years of, you know, lawyers and all, a lot of things that just takes up your energy, your time, your mind. You're not building your business when you're doing this. You're fighting for yourself, for your life sometimes. So a lot of you know, my banging my head on my desk, not sleeping at night. But you know, fortunately enough, after almost 2 years, we got out with a side deal and we won our case. And then we got the business growing very well.
So, Josh, I mean, you're looking at the bottom line, obviously. You know, is it profitable now? How long has it been profitable? What other aspects, when you're digging into the financials, is important to take note of?
There's on the financial side, there's definitely, I mean, there's the hidden costs. There's understanding understanding the business, because is it a product business? Is it a service business? You know, is it a technology business? Because is that what's going to drive the bottom line? Do you have the right intellectual property? Do you have the right rights, if you will? Do you have the right dollars invested behind that? projections. You're given projections when you value a company, and valuation is a huge aspect of it. When you value a company, are you valuing it on the past, on the current, on the future? And what amount or what average do you take versus past, present, and future? And there's a good part of it that comes with the story. There's a good part of what is the most representative of the company you're buying. If the company in the last 5 years wasn't very representative, but in the current year is the most representative because of changes in technology and people and where the market is going, you might put a lot more weight into that and a little bit more on the projection than you will in the past. So it very much is based on a lot about the type of business that you're in. But what I can tell you, notwithstanding when Frédéric first bought his business where it was all outsourced and there was nobody, human resource factor is huge. If you're going to buy a business and there's a lot of people in that business, you better do your due diligence on those people, on those that management team, those key people, those key team players, key employees, key management. You better do a lot of homework on them, because if they're the ones driving that business, there's no question that that's a huge factor in a potential future success.
Finally, how long does this process take typically? And when it's over, the work doesn't end there, right? What do you have to watch for after the deal?
To negotiate an LOI, letter of intent, and to make sure that whole transaction goes through, part of it is the business people, part of it is the entrepreneurs, part of it is the lawyers. They might delay a transaction, but equally important is once you finally get that deal done, you have to integrate. You have to make sure that things work well afterwards, and that's not always an easy thing, because you might be integrating people with like other people that you bought as part of the business deal with your own people. You might have to merge processes. You might have to change certain things. So there's a whole integrations, and I would never downplay, and Dan, I'm going to use this word that you live by, communication. If you can't communicate properly internally and externally, internally to your people, externally to your customers and suppliers, you are dead in the water. So I know that's just a brief aspect of the whole mergers and acquisitions, but there's definitely a lot of aspects and a lot of information that you need to go through and really live and ask the right questions.
Thank you very much, Josh Miller. Now we turn to Josh Miller
to
wrap up the show.
Now we turn back to myself, schizophrenic as I am. And as we approach the last one of our shows we do each week, we'll turn to Frédéric Roy of Paramedic Canada, and ask you, Fred, what would be your one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur?
Well, there's many things again, but I would say, it's believing in yourself. You need to have fortunately enough, in my case, I had a partner who helped me a lot on this. I'm an accountant, so I always try to see, balance the good and the bad things and make up my mind on, how we should go. But being with a marketing guy, who's always extremely positive, has probably helped, the belief, the clarity in our mind that things are going to work out well. And on top of all the plans and the product developments and all the things that, we've developed over time, I think this is just the spirit that you're going to be successful, will definitely drive you through success and difficulties.
Thank you very much, Frédéric. Dan, my quick takeaway, just to build on what Fred just said, there's methodical and there's go with your gut. And if you have both partners that can embody both, you got to be a powerful team.
Fred Roy of Paramedic, thanks so much for stopping by, Fred. I really enjoyed your story.
Thanks for having me.
And Josh, next week, which should be fun, we're going to talk about cars with Holland Auto.
Absolutely. Holland Automotive Group. Been around a long time. Should be fun.
All right. Today's Entrepreneur, Monday nights, 7 p.m. at CJAD. Don't forget to visit our website, todaysentrepreneur.org, for a decade worth of entrepreneur stories just like this one. We'll see you back here next Monday night. Have a good night.